Hey guys, this is Sanket, and I am that community guy. And this is the first episode of our podcast, that community podcast. Today we have with us Eric Ross, who's the community manager at Livepeer and Livepeer Studio. He's also a contributor at WGMI and Safari Club, and is also working on his very own podcast. So, Eric, let's take away with that and tell us about what do you do at Livepeer.
Hey, Sanket. Yeah, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate the invitation. So I am the full-time community manager for Livepeer and Livepeer Studio, where we're building a community of developers and of content creators who are interested in the future of video in Web3.
So what's the difference between the two, like Live Peer and Live Peer Studio?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Livepeer itself is the network. So there's a community of orchestrators who run the nodes that do all the transcoding and process all the video that gets uploaded. And then Livepeer Studio is focused mostly on app builders and developers as well as content creators. So in reality, they're all part of the same community, but Livepeer Studio is the more creator focused arm of it.
Right. So when it comes to community, are like these two the same community, or like Live Peer and Live Peer Studio? They both have different communities with different goals and different community tactics.
Yeah, so I would say that they are two, although they are all, everybody is part of the live peer community. There are two separate subgroups. One which is focused on live peer network, which is mostly the orchestrators, and then a separate community of app builders and content creators for live peer studio. And certainly there are different kind of community activations and plans for each different kind of subgroup because they contain different kind of personas who are interested in different things. So, how we approach that is, there's got to be a tailored approach to each kind of community group you want to talk with.
Right, right, right. Yeah. And tell us about what do you do as a contributor at Safari Club?
Yeah, so Safari Club is a group of people who are interested in the future of Web3 growth and marketing. And so as a member there, mostly what we do is participate in conversations and listen to different panels and speakers, and we're working together to build kind of a growth playbook for Web3. It's really a great place to network and meet people and kind of learn about all things Web3 and how to grow your project there.
And you also said you are a contributor at WAGMI, and can
Yeah,
you shine some light on that?
sure. Yeah. So I've been involved with WGMI since February of this year. Over there, I help out with operations, although I've been a little less active recently than in previous days, just with the nature of full-time work and family stuff. But WGMI is a DAO for community managers in Web3. So what we do there is educate and train people in Web3 native tools, techniques, and tactics for community management. And we'll be launching um, a kind of a learning course there, hopefully in early 2023, to kind of provide these training sessions for people who are interested in becoming community managers for Web3 projects.
That's great. I think I'm already a member there, so I'll check it out. And by the way, guys, here's something about Safari. Safari is a Web3 growth company, and what they did is they brought together top Web3 growth leaders from organizations like Ledger, CoinMarketCap, Dapper Labs, and many more to create a vision for the industry. So Safari is on a mission to rebuild marketing stack in Web3 community. And so it's starting with a powerful new attribution system designed to bring Web3 to the masses. And if you want to be a part of Safari, I think batch number 5, it's already filling up. And I'll leave the link to the Safari website in the description below, so you can fill out the form and join the club. Now, Eric, moving on to let's move all the way to the back. When did you discover Web3 and what did you do before getting into Web3?
Sure, yeah. Happy to talk about it. So I have been involved in Web3 for about a year and a half now. I got my start with a company called Koi Network, where I came on as the customer service person, basically helping build out their customer service stack, doing some operation stuff, and interacting with the community there. So yeah, in the timeline of Web3, I haven't been here that long, but 2 years sometimes feels like a lifetime in this space.
Yeah.
That was kind of my start in Web3 there. But before that, I was working in IT for a regional hospital system where I live. I did that for around 2 years, but previous to that, I was a brewer. I made beer for a living. I did that for just about a decade. So yeah, quite a different career, although it does tie in a little bit to community building because when you're running a brewery, you're kind of always hosting events and meetups and talking to people and talking about your product and promoting it. So definitely developed some community skills there, although that wasn't the main focus of my job. I was mostly focused on making the product.
That is so great. That is so interesting. I love your background and where you come from. I mean, you already have some experience, about community building before, even getting into Web3. So, how was it like, transitioning into the Web3? Like, when you started out as a customer associate, right? Uh, is it like what kind of things did you do in your day-to-day job?
Yeah, so the transition was there was a lot to learn, right? Web3 is an ever evolving field and space. There's so many different technologies to learn, so many different areas to learn about. There can be quite a steep learning curve getting on board. But what I was mainly focused on when I was doing kind of the customer service stuff was making sure that people in the community who were interacting with our products were having a good experience. If they had any issues with it, they would send in kind of support requests, and then I would follow up on that and make sure that we could get them sorted out. I got pretty familiar with reading block explorers, looking up transactions, kind of doing those base level things that you need to do in Web3 to learn about, how things are moving along the blockchain. So it was a really good experience in getting into the field. So it was a lot of that kind of one-to-one kind of customer support stuff. That was my main focus that I was brought on for at the company.
Right, right. So, through your experiences, it's like you have been, getting practice, yeah, or you've been practicing to become a Web3 community manager. Uh, my
Yeah,
story,
definitely.
yeah, go
I was going to say definitely. There's a lot of similarities between doing customer support and becoming a community manager. At the end of the day, the end goal is to make sure that the people you're interacting with go away feeling good about that interaction, right? So yeah, definitely a good experience that prepared me for community management.
For me, I was 6 months into the Web3, doing what a community manager does, and I had no idea about, something like this exists. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is something I'm doing. I'm, contributing at a project, and then after 6 months, I got to know this is the official title for it. People are hired full time into this position. People get paid. I'm like, damn. And the pay difference when it comes, like, I used to work in public relations and advertising. And when I transitioned into Web3 and I saw the pay difference, I'm like, wow, it's so huge. Like Web3 is really out there changing lives.
Yeah,
Ah,
for sure. There's kind of a huge pay scale when it comes to community management in Web3, right? Because community management itself, I don't think is super well defined yet in what that role looks like. It seems like community managers can be everything from somebody who is simply on Telegram and Discord and just kind of moderating the chat to somebody who is doing all the strategic planning, setting goals and KPIs and building platforms and doing outreach and creating content and doing marketing. So there's a huge range of responsibilities in the community management field, and as such, there's a huge difference in pay scales that are out there.
It's a very fluid role when it comes to community manager. Like there's no set of rules or boundaries organizations have when hiring a community manager. So I think at one point, organization when they put out that they're hiring a community manager, they kind of bleed into what a social media manager does, and they both just crash with each other. And but people are okay with that. I'm okay with that. What do you think on it?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because I think it's something that will need to be thought about and addressed in the coming years, especially as Web3 as like a market matures and as community management as a role in Web3 projects mature. I think there needs to be clearer definitions as to what a community manager actually does and what the expectations are. I think it's okay to have your community manager doing social media, and it's okay to have them doing all these other different parts of the role. However, it adds up really quickly the amount of stuff that can be expected from a community manager just because there isn't a clear definition of what the role is and does, and that can really quickly lead to people feeling overwhelmed and getting burnt out. So I think we definitely as a group, like community managers, need to push for clearer definitions into what the role looks like, as well as kind of how we fit into the overall kind of Web3 ecosystem as a role.
Let's talk about pay scale in the industry. If you're watching this, I think this is what it came for. Let's talk about how much should a beginner community manager expect in the Web3 space versus someone who, say, about has 1 or 2 years of experience. If
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good question, right? And there are so many factors that go into determining what pay scale should be. A lot of that is like, is it a full time job? Is it a part time job? What are your responsibilities within that role? I think a lot of introductory Web3 community manager jobs are not full time roles. A lot of the time, those beginner roles are, maybe 10 or 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week. You're managing a little bit of social media, you're on the Discord, you're kind of engaging in chats there. And those kind of roles, will naturally come with a bit of a lower pay scale just because it's not a full-time commitment. I don't think that any community manager should ever be making, less than 2,000 US dollars a month. Depending on, regardless of work, although I can't speak to pay. I can't speak to pay scale across the industry as all, but I think there should be at the very least, an appropriate living wage for anybody who is doing community management. No matter where you live in the world, you should be compensated fairly for the work that you do, especially because community management, and even more so in the introductory level community management roles, are kind of like a 24/7 thing, right? It's hard to turn off as a community
right,
manager.
right.
You get the notifications on your phone, you're on Twitter, you see comments you want to respond to, you're in Discord talking to your friends, and you can see notifications happening in your project's Discord. So you go in there and you're starting to answer, and it's 10 p.m. or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and you're doing all this stuff. I I think people should definitely be compensated fairly for what they're doing there, for even if it's just kind of that intro level role. And then I think a lot of kind of community management wages kind of scale nicely along the same lines that you would look at in a marketing or PR or growth position. Community management tends to fall under those departments for a company anyways. So, if you look at what a junior marketer is making in Web3, or a junior, growth specialist, I think that's a pretty fair range to be looking at for kind of those intermediary level community management roles.
I've
So,
seen, yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of organizations discriminate on your geolocation. Say, if I'm based somewhere in Asia. and in you're based somewhere in Northern America, I'll be paid lesser and you'll be paid more. Like they won't see talent or the years of experience. They'll just like you don't need that kind of money because you're staying in a relatively cheaper location. I think the industry still needs to stop doing that and just pay your community managers because they are the people who are talking with your customers and your community, and they are like the first line of conversation that's happening around and revolving your project. So you don't want to piss them off.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I do not, I believe when you hire somebody, you're hiring them for their skills and what they can do for your company. And whether they live in Asia or Europe or North America or South America or anywhere in the world is kind of irrelevant, especially in Web3. I think if you can't afford to pay people the proper wage for the job that they're doing, then you just can't afford to have somebody doing that job, and you need to really kind of rethink what you're trying to do. I don't think it's fair to pay somebody who's working just as hard with just as many years experience in Africa less than you're paying somebody in North America. It doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't feel right. And I think that we as community managers as a profession need to address that and kind of stand up for one another and make sure that our colleagues are getting paid fairly no matter where they live in the world.
Great point. Now, oh yeah, you also said that you're working around a podcast. Can you tell us something about the podcast?
Yeah, sure. So I am in the process of recording podcast with my friend called the Community Consult, and what we talk about in that podcast is the kind of pivotal moments in a community's growth. So we analyze different communities, different projects, see where that business is, at what point community came into the picture, how did that community have an effect, positive, negative. We try and keep as impartial as possible. We're just presenting the facts about what happened in those communities throughout the life of the project. So we leave it up to you to decide, is this a good thing or a bad thing? But we think it's really interesting to see the effect that communities have on these projects and how they can either really uplift the project or really have a negative effect depending on how things turn out. So we have one episode recorded and released right now. It's available on all, whatever podcast platform you listen on. It's available there, and we have a second one that we are recording hopefully next week. So it should be coming out soon.
So who is it intended for? Like, what's your customer base look like? Like, who can find value through your podcast?
Yeah, so I think the people that might find the most value are kind of project founders themselves to get a better understanding of how communities can affect the outcome of their project and to understand the importance of building a thriving and engaged community. I think also people who are interested in community management as a profession might find it interesting to give it a listen and see the kind of effect that your work can have on a business, how important it is, the stuff that you're doing for a project. And I think those are the two main groups. And then thirdly, I think anybody who's kind of interested in just business, like businesses in general, and kind of analyzing a business and seeing how different factors affect it, might get some value from the podcast too.
Right. So, guys, if you want to follow Eric, I'll leave his Twitter link in the description below. And if you want to listen to his podcast, I'll leave a link to his podcast in the description below as well. So moving on. What does, as a community manager at Livepeer and Livepeer Studio, what does your everyday routine look like?
Yeah, so it depends. It's a widely varied routine. The things I do at Livepeer and Livepeer Studio are very dependent on the campaign we're running or what we're doing at that time. So at Livepeer, community management falls under the marketing department. So I work closely with my colleagues in marketing and content and social media to plan out kind of all these campaigns and engagements for our community. But my day will always start on Twitter, reading comments, responding to people, And then we'll go in Discord, welcome new members to the Discord channel, make sure that everybody can find the things they're looking for in the Discord, engage with people. I try and have as many kind of one-on-one meetings with community members a week as I can. So if you join Livepeer, the Livepeer community, and you're a new member, I will reach out to you and try and set like a 15-minute call so I can get to know you a little bit, see what you're interested in, and then kind of point you in the right direction so you know how you can get started engaging in the Livepeer community. And then there's a lot of work in the background as well around kind of analytics and planning and just general kind of overall community strategy.
Now that you mentioned Discord, I just remembered this. A community manager friend of mine believe in minimalism when it comes to community. For example, if your community is, already live and thriving on Discord, you shouldn't, go out there and establish another platform for your community like Slack, or Telegram or Reddit, because according to them, it just, spreads out what community you have, already on Discord. What do you think about it?
I think that's an important thing to think about is where is your community most active and then focus your energies there. I do agree that having too many platforms is not a good thing for any community because you want to kind of focus your energies and attentions all in one place as much as possible. And even within that platform, like on Discord, for instance, like you don't want to have 50 or 60 different channels, right? If 45 of those channels are quiet and have no activity in it, then it's just confusing for new members who come in. So I agree. I think minimalism when it comes to community platforms is a good thing. I do, however, think that being present on multiple platforms is a good idea because there will be community members or audiences on those platforms who may not be in your Discord already. For instance, like Discord itself is not a primary platform, right? There's no discoverability there. Like if you wanted to join Livepeer and the only platform we were on was Discord, you would just never find the Livepeer Discord server unless you stumbled upon our website and found it. So having a presence on something like Twitter or on something like Reddit where people can at least learn about your community and then have a call to action for them to join the community where all the community efforts are then focused on the Discord, I think is probably the best way to go about it, or whatever platform you choose, right? Maybe it's not Discord, maybe it is Telegram is your platform, or one of any number of other community platforms that exist. But I do agree in general that the fewer places where you have to focus your energy, the better and the happier your community will be overall.
Right, right. And I'll follow up with this. Say you have a huge project, right? You have good amount of funding, you have good amount of funds allocated to community operations, and say you're the community lead. Should you be looking at, hiring a team who, just makes your job easier? Or like should you go at it alone? Because a lot of projects when I go there, I see like, there's just a community manager and not a team, but other departments they'll have huge teams like marketing and business development and dev team. But when it comes to community, it's just, one person doing being the community manager. Do you believe
Yeah,
organizations should hire, teams instead of just one person?
I think that's a really good question. And again, it's one of those questions that really depends on the organization, right? So if you're a community manager and you are expected to do social and content and marketing and this and that, then there should certainly be a team around you to help with some of the day-to-day community management stuff. If you're a community manager at a project that of medium size that has marketing, content, social people separately that are kind of doing all of that work already, then you might be able to get away with just being one solo community manager. I think in general, um, you know, depending on the size of your community and the activity, it's always helpful to have a team around you. I think you're one person, right? You can't be on 24/7. You can't do that forever. So what I see a lot of projects do is they'll have one community manager who is like essentially the manager part of that, and then they'll hire a number of part-time community moderators or community advocates who will help out with the chats and kind of taking care of stuff in the Discord and doing a lot of that engagement work, whereas the community manager will focus more on the strategic end of it. So I think there's a huge range of things that can happen. Obviously, as a community manager, I'm all for bringing on a team of community people, especially as your project grows and your community kind of splits up into lots of sub communities. You just can't be everywhere at once. So having a team around you is an important thing in the long run.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. And let's move on to the next question now. When it comes to community, uh, have you experienced failure, and what was your key learning from that experience? Could you like, if you have experienced some failure while, building or managing a community, have you like
Sure.
taken something away from it?
Sure. Yeah. To be honest, community management is full of failures, right? Like, failure is just a natural part of the process until you figure out what things work for your community. So, not everything you do is going to be a success, especially in the early stages of community. Like when you are posting in we're going to use Discord as an example because that's the kind of the most popular platform for Web3 projects, which is where my focus is in community management. But when you're in these Discords and they're young and there's barely anybody in there, and you're posting in the Discord and nobody is answering you, and you can go, hours and hours and hours or days without getting a response. Like that's a very tough thing to deal with, and you kind of have to learn how to focus your energy on providing the best messages as possible in Discord, the best opportunities for engagement as possible. So whether that is doing these one-on-one calls to get to know people and then moving that into the Discord to engage, or pivoting and finding interesting content out there that you can share with your community that can spark a conversation. There's been any number of events that I've hosted in the past where you create an event, you get ready for it, people RSVP that they're going to come to the event, and then the event time comes and you start the event and it's just you sitting there alone in the Discord channel, or you and one or two other people that come in, see there's nothing going on, and then leave. This happens a lot, and it's something that you should be prepared for, especially early on. And you have to learn to not take these things personally. I don't ever consider them to be a failure per se, because it's just something you tried that maybe wasn't the right approach for the community you're in, or for the community you're in at that stage of the community's life cycle. So, just take notes about everything you do, record what you do, write down your thought process, why you were doing something, why you think it could have worked, why it didn't work, why you think it may be worth continuing because it will work in the future, and just stick to that. And as long as you're kind of writing down what you're doing and documenting and continuing to reach out to people and invite them to these things, you're going to see, with consistency, with repeatedly doing these events, with repeatedly showing up for your community, they're going to start showing up for you in the long run. Community is not a short-term thing, right? Very few communities go from 0 to 10,000 members in a week, 2 weeks, a month, right? It's built member over member, day after day, over months, even years, sometimes depending on the project. So it's really learning to kind of tailor your expectations and know that, the work that you're doing does matter. Just keep showing up for it, and people will notice that. And the more people start noticing, the more people will organically recommend you to their friends, and you'll get more people showing up to your events and joining your community for sure.
Right. Let's move on to the next question, and this question is follow up on what you just said. What do people most, misunderstand about building a community in Web3? And, by people, I mean founders and other people in the Web3 space.
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of misunderstandings about what building a community is actually about. And this is a discussion I have a lot of often with other community managers is, you know, there's a big difference between building an audience and building a community. So an audience, is a group of people that are listening to what you have to say or hear what you have to say, and that's it. It's me talking out to a group of people, and it can be relatively easy to build an audience compared to a community because you can get people interested in what you're saying by talking about airdrops or talking about free this or whitelist this or free mint
Yeah.
that. It's easy to gather people around that will just kind of show a passing interest, and then yeah, it's a number in your Discord, right? Yeah, you may have 10,000 people, you may have 20,000 people, but how many of those people are actually active? I think there's still a lot of understanding that needs to be done in that, like, a community doesn't exist until people are talking to each other organically and helping each other out. A community doesn't need a community manager to lead the discussion. The people should be talking about that themselves, should be kind of organizing events themselves, should be helping each other out, should be rallied around a cause and passionate about it, and interested in contributing and not just listening, but actually engaging and interacting on their own. I think what's hard for a lot of founders is realizing that this isn't something that happens really quickly. It's something that takes a long time to build connections. I mean, if you think about like friendships you've made in your lifetime, like, you don't necessarily always meet your best friend on day one, right? It takes a lot of time interacting with each other, and then eventually, you just naturally come together, and you've built that connection and that friendship. So these kind of things are hard to track with metrics. And um, I mean, everybody loves metrics, right? People want to see the number go up. They want to see those kind of like big growth statistics. But when it comes to actually building a community, it's a much smaller, a much more intimate, a much more one-on-one, a much slower process. And I think there's still a lot of kind of education and understanding that has to happen around that.
Yeah, I totally agree with, keeping the community building process very organic because like when I was new to my community manager job, and I started out, it happened like a week after that, and the founder of the project just texts me and he says, "Why isn't the community growing?" I'm like, "Mate, hold on." It's
Yeah.
not magic, I'm not just gonna, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
community.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And we were having a lot of discussion around, giving money to people, incentivizing, like a lot of activities or events. But I was always against that because, say, yeah, I mean, we are giving out $100 to people, and people will join like anything, like crazy. Like if you post it on Twitter, like, like 10,000 people actually joined. Like we did that experiment, and we did that, and they participated in the activity. And after a week or so, there's 10,000 people in the community, and no one's talking, and it just didn't look right to me. And I was like, this is what I was talking about.
Mhm.
And we took a lesson from that and moved on.
Yeah, and it's a tough lesson to learn, right? And I think a lot of people learn that the hard way. I do think, like, there's nothing wrong with incentivizing people to join your community, but it's what that incentive is and how you plan that incentive that makes the difference, right? There's a huge difference between airdropping somebody, um, uh, I don't know, like, whatever amount of token, right? A hundred tokens, and then just being like, okay, here's your 100 tokens. If you don't have a plan for what people should do with those tokens afterwards, and then encourage people to use those tokens to like do stuff in the community, they're going to get their tokens, they're going to go on whatever exchange, they're going to try and sell them for whatever value, and you're never going to see that person again. If you have a plan for that airdrop, if you like really plan that out, you can drive a lot of engagement, and you can use that to build a healthy community by providing activities for them to do with those tokens that they can engage with their community members and start building those connections. So I think the straight up just like giving people stuff to join your community is a bad idea, but I think if you have like a whole plan around getting people to join, then incentivizing people and encouraging them to follow through on those incentives is a good strategy for growth. But there is a fine line between that, and honestly, like we're still learning, right? This is still a pretty early days for community management in Web3. So finding the right tools and techniques to do this kind of thing is a learning process for everybody.
I think when it comes to airdropping tokens, rewarding someone, rewarding your loyal community member who show up every day without asking, and helping out people without asking. I think they deserve that amount, or they deserve some kind of shout out or recognition, or like I know one such community, Neon Labs. They are an EVM on Solana. What they did is they hired a community. I mean, they already had a community manager. They had another community manager, so it was like a team, and they hired one of the community members who was there from day one, just showing up and doing everything in their power. They hired him as a community manager, and I think that's a very, beautiful move on their part and something that they're doing right.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. You always want to reward your most active community members, right? I think how you plan out that reward can change. Sometimes there's a danger in rewarding people who are organically active, right? Who are there of their own free will, who are interacting in the community because they like being in your community. There's a danger in rewarding them with like monetary rewards in that they might start to feel like it's becoming a bit of a job to do, and then they kind of lose interest without that motivation. But doing something like, lifting up a community member into a community manager role and showing that, yeah, we love that you show up all the time, and here's an opportunity for you to become part of the team, like that kind of thing is really smart. And I think that was a very good move on their part to do that.
Let's move on to the next question now. What is the most important lesson, like just like single most important lesson you have learned being a community manager? And it's not just, limited to Web3. It's, you can
In
go back.
general, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most important lesson I've learned as a community manager is that you need to show up every day and be there for your community, and you need to listen when you ask your community, when you talk to your community, when you post questions, when you see discussions happening. You need to really listen to what people are saying and like take their feedback seriously, let them know that they're heard, encourage them to contribute more. Doing that kind of thing is what builds trust in not just the community manager but in the project as a whole, right? Showing your community that what they say is important, not just to you, but to whatever project you're working for, is essential. That's how you're going to get people who become like true fans of your project and who are bought in from day one. So, showing up and following through on the things you say you're going to do and listening to your community. These are things that I've found to be like the most important lesson I learned early on as a community manager. It's not just about asking people to do stuff and then a week later asking them to do more stuff, right? It's about asking them to do something and then making sure that you're also providing them value, making sure that they're heard and that what you ask them to do, they get follow up on. I think that's something that a lot of projects could um, learn to do better, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I was going to ask you, what is the important personality trait or strength someone should develop in process to become, a great community manager? I think you already answered that with your last answer.
Yeah, I think there are a number. I think there's two sides to that, right? I think to be a successful community manager, you have to have a lot of empathy. You have to be able to relate to people and listen to them, and help them with their questions and what they come through. And you have to be able to relate to those people on a one-to-one process. I think that's very important to build a successful community. But I think another thing that is important is that for community managers themselves to build kind of this like real just like desire to stick to it and like to really like follow through and to build that like internal desire to be able to show up and just kind of do the thing every day. And that's a personality trait, or that's a skill that takes some time to develop, right? And it can be frustrating in the early days and it can feel difficult and it makes you feel like you want to give up. But having that innate desire to continue on and to show up and to keep doing the work, I think is one of the most important traits you can look for in a community manager.
Right. I'd like to add a point to that. Guys, when it comes to community, say you're a community manager, that you're a part of, you're building the community, and that's like, an ongoing process. Like how there's a marketing plan, and we look at marketing plan like, there's this marketing plan and now it's done. There's this sales plan and now it's done. Community is ongoing process. Like, it's you like never stop building a community. The day you stop, you say like, community, yeah, it's done, it's built. That's the day, it just goes all downhill because you're always building a community, and it never stops.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. You can it never stops. You're right. The day that you say, "Yep, this is the community," is the day that that community starts to die off. So, yeah, it's it's a commitment. When you're in, you're in. So get ready for the ride. It's fun, but it is a
Yeah,
commitment.
totally. What is the one piece of advice you give out someone starting out as a community manager? Like just one piece of advice.
Yeah, one piece of advice would be, that's a good question, actually. What is the best piece of advice I give to somebody who is just starting as a community manager? I think the best piece of advice I could give to somebody who is just starting as a community manager is to learn to not take things personally and learn that early on. Communities are, especially in Web3, especially or not even Web3, but in any online community, communities are filled with diverse people from a multitude of backgrounds, upbringings, cultures, and especially online in text space, it's very hard to figure out tone sometimes about what when somebody writes a message, how they're what they actually mean behind it. So I think as a community manager, your job is primarily to be there for your community and help kind of uplift that. And it can feel sometimes like you're being attacked in some conversations, but you have to realize that like you can't take that stuff personally. You just have to learn to let it slide off your back. And if it's something that's really bothering you, talk about it with other team members, and don't keep all that stuff inside. But really, when it comes to your community, like don't take it personally when you get negative messages. Don't take it personally if there are negative messages about the community itself. Don't take it personally if people don't show up to meetings or events or that kind of thing. None of this is like personal attack on you. There's just always an opportunity to kind of learn from what's happening and kind of pivot your message and kind of help bring those people back around to a positive sentiment. So yeah, not taking things personally is a lesson that should be learned early on. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time in an online community, I think.
Totally, totally. Now, let's move on. I went through your Twitter. I
Mm-hmm.
follow you on Twitter, right? And you post this post called Community Gathering, right? And you post about different topics, but that ultimately revolves around Web3 community.
Mm-hmm.
They have been super valuable to me, but the question I want to ask you is, how do you come up with it? What is your thought process while coming up with information you put out there? Like, is it observational or does it come through experience?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There's a number of different kinds of content that I like to make. The community gathering specifically is a roundup of all the interesting community information and reading that I've done that week. So Typically, I spend a good amount of time reading different blogs or listening to podcasts or on Twitter, reading different threads and talking to other community managers. And when I find something really valuable, I put it in a little notebook, and then I use Notion. I put it in my Notion, and then I'll compile that at the end of the week and share that with anybody who's on Twitter, so everyone can see like, hey, this is stuff that I found really valuable. I hope you find value there too. The other stuff that I write is more kind of from my experience and observations in the community management world. So I like to write little like one page guides on different aspects of being a community manager, or how to hire a community manager, or getting hired as a community manager. And that is usually from my personal experience or from talking with other community managers, people in the community field. And yeah, I'll sit down and think about a topic that I think is important to share, and then write that up, and hopefully people find value from it.
So in a way, you're creating content out there, right? In
Mm-hmm.
some other form of way. And has this helped you? Like you're putting value out there, giving or providing value to people. Has it helped you in any way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've made so many great connections through doing this. I think, well, I met you through that, right? Through you found me
Right.
on Twitter, and here we are today. I've made some really great friends in the community management field, just through sharing content and interacting on Twitter, and just having those back and forth conversations. When somebody comments on your post, like, comment back and have a conversation, and then you build those connections with people, and it's led to a lot of kind of interesting opportunities or ideas or collaborations, some that have happened, some that are coming in the future. Yeah, I think sharing your thoughts and putting them out there is a really valuable thing to do. It can feel very intimidating. I certainly feel, every time I publish something, I feel nervous that nobody's going to like it, nobody's going to see it, no, there's going to be no interest in it. But just the act of doing it, I think, is really important, to me specifically. Just getting it out there, and then when people do interact with you, it's just a really good feeling and a really good way to get to know other people in the field. And the more people the more kind of relationships you build, the more opportunities you're going to have in the long run. So yeah, it's been super valuable to me, and I hope that the things that I write, provide even more value to the people that are reading it.
Right. So guys, if you're out there, if you're a community manager, if you're providing value to someone, I guarantee you that, the value you get in return is like 100x more. And like Eric said, be on the creator side instead of consumer side.
Yeah,
Because I see a
yeah,
lot of people who are consuming and a very less, amount of people who are creators, but it's always, great to be on the creator side of the scale, and that way you can, uh, you know, create a personal brand of your own, like Eric did, and that can provide tremendous amount of value to, your journey in general.
definitely. I think what happens to a lot of people feel like, oh, I don't have a lot of experience, I don't have a lot of this, I don't have a lot of that. What could I share that people would find value in? But every person has such a unique point of view and comes from such a unique background that, like, anything you share, any experience that you've had that you're willing to share with people, will provide value to somebody else who comes from a similar background, or will provide like a learning opportunity for somebody who comes from a totally different background, right? You don't have to be the best community manager in the world. You don't have to be the best marketer in the world. You don't have to be the best writer in the world. Just sharing that information with people and getting it out there, and having your voice heard is always worthwhile.
Thank you. Thank you for your tips, Eric. And I think that is it from my side. Would you be willing to ask me anything, like any questions you have in your mind for me?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really excited to learn about what you are doing with this show, and I think you have a YouTube channel, and what your community management journey kind of looks like. We've talked a lot about me in the last little bit, and I've been happy to answer these questions. But I think it would be good for everybody to hear a little bit more about your background and what made you want to record this show.
Right. So it's a bit of a long journey now. I think in my Web2 days, and back in 2020, I graduated from my university. I got my MBA degree, and I started working at this advertising firm. Did not like it, left in a month. Started working at this PR firm. Did not like it, left in a month. And I was like really, really lost back then because the amount of stress was like too high. I was putting in like, 22 hours a day for
It's
a
too many
salary.
hours.
Yeah, for a salary which was not supporting me, not even 10%. So yeah, I was like really lost, and that's when I discovered crypto. And I started, trading, in crypto, like, got like 50% gains on my first day of crypto, lost it all back in the next day. And that is something that was like my first, what do you say, first connection to the Web3 space. And a couple of months went by, and I'm just, out there trading and investing. And one day I just lost some of my money in a scam. And I was devastated, like, why would someone do that? And, I'm just thinking, what is this industry? And that is when I started reading up on the Web3 space. So the scam I lost the money in, there was a whistleblower developer who I got in touch with, and he told me about what went down. I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but what should I do now? So he invited to me his very own project that he was building, and that's where I started, just unconsciously being a community manager, like what a community manager does. So I set up a community platform that was Telegram. I set up a Discord platform. I started welcoming people in, onboarding them, taking them through one-on-one calls, and telling them about, what the product is and all that. So I did that for like almost 6 months, and then I realized this is something people do in, the Web3 space, and they get paid for it. I'm like, what? All right, okay, I like this. And the amount of money, it was more than, what I was looking for. So I was like, yeah, this is fine. And I said goodbye to the team and looked for another opportunity. And that's when I found a DeFi project in the Solana ecosystem. I was a community manager there for about 6 months, and that is where I learned much more, about being a community manager and building not just online communities, but also offline communities, going to events such as Solana Hacker House and, a lot of Web3 conferences, and met like so many, new people, great people. And that is when I, you know, got like really, really deep into the community manager side of the Web3 space. I was let go after 6 months because of, business expense, because, market wasn't doing great, and they like outsource it to some agency, the whole marketing and community side of things. So I don't blame them. I mean, yeah, I mean everyone's
It's
losing money.
always it's always the marketing and community teams that are the first to go when there's a budget cut. I hear you.
And then I started applying at on other projects in the Web3 space. But like when I go to web pages or career pages, I see hiring for a community manager offering this and this amount of money, remote, but next to it in brackets it's always Europe or US. So for me, who's not from Europe or United States, I'm like, okay, if it's a remote, but I'm not from either of this continent, so I cannot apply. So that is something I've found very common in the space, but that's all right. And that's when I discovered. community coach Carmen, and just started binging on her content. And I just realized that the amount of value that she's providing to people out there. I saw her website and I saw her Twitter page and just her whole journey. So she has sort of created a personal brand around herself, which is being the community coach, and that is being paid off like tremendously to her in her professional journey. And that is what something I decided to do, not because I want something out of it, but I just want to provide value to people and being seen out there. So I came up, I saw this gap when it comes to knowledge when it comes to community managers, because no one's talking about what they do, what are the experiences, and what are they doing in general. So I came up with that community guy YouTube channel where I'll be talking about topics revolving Web3 communities, say be Discord security and tools, and like just talking about Web3 communities in general. And I decided to start that community podcast where I will be talking with community managers in the space, like yourself, community leads in the space, and where do they come from? What are their journey? Hopefully, this podcast provides value to someone who wants to, get started as a community manager in the Web3 space, but if they're intimidated or they do not have the required knowledge, how to get started and just how to enter the space, maybe they can watch this and find some value out of it. So that is why I decided to fill that gap in the space.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's great. You come from such a like a diverse background of getting into the community management space, and you have such a you have a unique point of view. I think you're going to provide a ton of value to community managers who are just getting started, and community managers who have been doing it for however long, right? There's always something new to learn. So I'm really excited to be a part of your show, and I'm looking forward to seeing it grow. And yeah, also, yeah, huge shout out to community coach Carmen, providing a ton of value to community managers everywhere. Great resource for anybody who is looking to learn about community management. Definitely check out her channel.
I'll add the link in the description, guys, for that, and I'll add Eric's Twitter in the description as well, and the link to his podcast if you want to listen to it, like I already said. And I'll also add the link to Safari Club, Livepeer and Livepeer Studio. So a lot of links going on down there. But do join us on a journey if you feel like we are adding value to you or your journey. And I'll see you guys very, very soon to my next video. It can be a podcast or a video, not sure. Like I just started, doing this a week back. So
We'll find out.
yeah, we'll find out how it goes. Thank you, Eric, for joining us today. And I think we have hit like that sweet 1 hour, you know, timeline spot. So if I drag this anymore, people it's just gonna be, okay, that's it, that's enough. So yeah, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to seeing the show in the future.
Bye bye.